Tuesday, October 8, 1966. Discourse on the Bhagavad Gita.
Studying the sixth chapter of the Gita, which dealt with meditation. In the whole chapter, there are many directions about meditation, how to meditate, qualification for meditation, how to control the mind, what happens if one fails in meditation in this life. But all on a sudden, in the last verse it is said, of all those persons who meditate, rather of all those persons who are spiritual aspirants, if they with one-pointed devotion to me worship me with sincere reverence, they are the best of all spiritual aspirants, including those who meditate. It is a startling statement. All of a sudden it talks of devotion and who loves God with one-pointed devotion and reverence. It says such persons are the best of all spiritual aspirants. It's a very clear and startling statement at the close of the chapter on meditation. What could be the reason? Some such verses we find in other chapters of the Gita also, but this is most startling. Another verse of this type is in the 11th chapter, where Arjuna had the vision of the universal presence of God. Literally, he saw the vision how God is all-pervading. There also, he says towards the end, the vision that you have seen, it cannot be had by studying of the scriptures, the Vedas, by doing austerities, by charitable works, not by meditation, but by pure devotion. By pure devotion, you can know God or know me, Sri Krishna was saying. You can know me, you can see me. It is because Arjuna saw the vision. It is not simply knowing. Knowing is one thing, seeing is much more tangible, much more reliable. So Arjuna saw him, saw the universal vision. And he says, if only by devotion, if there is one-pointed devotion, thereby only, you can know me, you can see me, you can become one with me. That also very clear-cut and tremendous statement. In 11th chapter, the last verse. In the last verse it is said, one who does work dedicated to me, one who considers myself the supreme goal of life, one who has great devotion to me, one who has no hostility for anyone, he realizes me. It is strange that Shankaracharya, whose philosophy is monism, he considers this is the most important verse of the Gita. It is amazing he would say that, though his philosophy is monism, not God but Brahman, and oneness with God through meditation or through discrimination. There is another verse which is in the last chapter. There also Sri Krishna says, direct all your thoughts to me. Try to have devotion to me. Do all your spiritual practices for me. Have reverence for me. I promise that thereby you will realize me, you will enter into me. That means you will become one with me. I promise thee. And Shankaracharya, though he was of intellectual philosophical type, in his commentary writes, it's a great consolation to all persons who have devotion that God promises that one will surely realize him. For ordinary persons, it's simply a passage, a verse, poetically put. But one who has spiritual yearning and one who tries to live spiritual life deeply, that's a great, most important thing. And Shankaracharya brought it out clearly. Of all these words in this verse, he gives importance to that statement. I promise that you will realize me. So here we find a great importance is given to bhakti or devotion. There's another verse in the Gita, I think it is in the 9th chapter or 10th chapter. One who with one-pointed devotion constantly remember me, for him it is easy to realize me. Important thing, it is easy. In another verse, in another way, it is said, one with one-pointedness constantly thinks of me. For him I shall supply all that is necessary. I shall carry his burden for the present problems and also for the future problems. By the way, there is a story that one commentator was writing commentary on the Gita. He was a great scholar, though spiritually minded. He had not so much devotion. The verse said that I carry the burden of him who constantly remembers me with one-pointed devotion. He found it is impossible. How can God carry our burden? He can give us devotion, but he cannot carry our burden. It is impossible. He struck up that word and he gives us devotion, he gives us realization. He thought it was logical. And he went to take his bath in a river which was at a distance. In the meantime, there came a boy and brought different articles of food for him. The wife of the scholar thought the husband has gone to take bath on the way. He ordered these things, and these things had come. But this boy gave many articles of food, but in his shoulder there was some blood stained. He asked him, what's the matter? He said, somebody did that to me. And he went away. When the husband came, he finds all these articles of food. He said, where did they come from? The wife said, did you not send them? A boy came, a nice-looking boy, but he had some cut on his shoulder, and he said, somebody has cut it. Then the scholar thought, in that verse, he has cut this word and put his own word there. He made that mistake. Then he found that actually God shoulders our burden. In any case, that might be a story. The emphasis is, if one with one-pointed devotion remembers God, God gives whatever is necessary for us. Ramakrishna in modern language would say that if you have real devotion to God, he will supply all that is necessary for you, for your spiritual practice. He would emphatically say these things. He says, if you just have real devotion, if you have real yearning, if you have real love, then you will realize God in no time. You may get it is in the twinkling of an eye, sometimes you would say. A great saint would say that if you, with one pointed devotion, with real sincerity, think of God, in an instant you can realize Him. If your mind and your words are the same, if there's harmony between what you say and what you inwardly think and feel. It is strange in Yoga book of Patanjali. There are many verses dealing the abstruse descriptions of the mind, how to control the mind, what happens when one meditates, the psychic powers, realization, and so on. Abstruse. It is difficult to understand something, but even if you understand something, it is difficult to put into practice. All of a sudden, in one aphorism, it is said, or by devotion to God. So all these directions are set aside, are balanced with devotion, or by devotion to Him, or by self-surrender to Him. At a stroke, everything is set aside, or equally balanced, or equal it is, with all your spiritual practices, hard practices. In another aphorism it says, if you just repeat the name of the Lord, that means devotion, then you can realize the highest samadhi. These are from the scriptures, but practically all saints say the same thing. A disciple of Ramakrishna would said, one who has real devotion has not to go through all these hard practices, spiritual practices. If one has love for God, real love for God, then everything comes to him at once. Or one who thinks there's nobody else to support him, help him, excepting God, he will find within himself a great strength. Just how these things are balanced, and the same thing is uttered by all saints belonging to all ages. In this Gita we find what happens when one succeeds in meditation. Perhaps remember it was said, when you succeed in meditation, when you have real meditation, you get joy, which cannot be had with ordinary sense perception. And it was so great a joy that it cannot be described. And it is a thing, when you get it, you do not look for anything else. Nothing earthly can be compared with that. In bhakti literature, the same thing is said. If you have love for God, you become, you realize the truth. You become a man of realization. You become blessed. And you find the source of joy within you. You have not to look for joy outside of you. You get something by getting which, you do not yearn, hanker after anything, nor do you feel unhappy if anything worldly, anything earthly is taken from you, nor do you feel enthusiastic for getting something new. And by knowing which, you become amazed, stunned as it were. It is such a tremendous gift. And you find the source of all happiness is within you. The same thing about devotion. But How do you explain? It says in the Gita, after describing all the intricacies of meditative life, why all of a sudden it is said that if you have devotion, real devotion, then if one has real devotion, one is the best of all spiritual aspirations. The fact is, one might be meditating. Meditating is really only a struggle, trying to meditate. Mind might be a little disciplined, but that is only by the way. Real thing you have not got. Real thing comes when you have developed love for God, or when you have tapped the source of joy. One might be meditating for long hours. Mind also might be a bit calm, thinking on certain thoughts. Mind becomes calm only even while reading a book. That does not mean spiritual life. That does not mean real spiritual life. It is outside. It is on the outer court. One has not entered into the inner court. It is on only preliminary stage. It is on the stage of ritualism. It becomes mechanical. A bit calmness. That is not the real thing. Joy should come. Or within you thus become a spirit of surrender or love. It is another thing. Surrender, self-surrender is the name of love, or non-attachment. When there is love for God, love for the ideal, real love has grown, then one finds that one is on the way really. Ramakrishna used to say, yes, any amount of repeating the name is not sufficient. There is need for repeating the name. Unless and until you have developed yearning for God. That means love for God. When you have developed love for God, there is a yearning to see Him. It is the same thing. Love for God or yearning for Him. If you have love for a person, for anybody, you want to see Him. So in the same way, through spiritual practice, through meditation or japam or anything, unless that yearning has come, unless his love for God has grown, one is on the outer level. One has not entered into the real spiritual life. So there are two stages. One stage is outside, another stage is inner thing. One is ritualistic, another is real love for God. So when one has developed love for God, it is easy. When one has love for God, genuine, one can demand. First, one gets the yearning, intense yearning. When there is intense yearning, it is easy. It is extremely easy for those who have realized God's sake. God is waiting to bless us. There came a political leader to Ramakrishna. He had spiritual sense, though his life was in politics, so he could talk things, argue things. Ramakrishna talked of God, and he was saying that why God does not listen to us, and what's the use of praying to Him? Ramakrishna said, why? He's just like a magnet drawing the iron filings. He's always drawing you like a magnet. Why should you say that He does not care for us? So those who know say that way. You would say that there is impurity. Your real devotion is covered by things. So when the heart is pure, then at once it comes. You are simply to remove the dirt, remove the obstacles. That's a great deal of difference. Here it is ready there. You have to remove simply the obstacles. Then it comes. Efforts are not necessary even. So the Gita says it is easy. when you constantly remember, then heart becomes pure. Ramanuja said, what is meant by realization? He said realization means constant remembrance. He gives a description. When oil is poured from one vessel to another vessel, there is a continuous stream, there is no break. When water falls, there might be break. So when the mind constantly remembers God, then it is as good as realization. When does one constantly remember God? When there is great love for God, then it becomes a constant agony or joy. There is a joy in struggling also. When a just precious thing you struggle for, there is joy in that struggle also. Here, when there is constant remembrance, it is as good as realization. But constant remembrance comes when there is great love for God. So here the Gita says, simply by meditation, you cannot get the thing. Yes, when you succeed completely, then you will have that state by getting which nothing else seems covetable. But for that you must have love. A love for God you must have. Only then you are safe or secure. You are in the right way. You have found out the path. Then it is easy. When you have found out the real path, it is extremely. As I said, when you have love for a person, you can demand. A child can demand. Ramakrishna says a child by sheer insistence get a thing from his parents. Parents might not like to give something. When a child becomes insistent, and it gets it, the parents do not refuse. In the same way, just here to give a simile from the worldly life. But actually, thing is that one gets at once. When real love has grown, that means the heart has been purified. Heart is more important than intellect. With intellect we discriminate. In the monistic path, discrimination is emphasized upon. Constantly discriminate what is right and wrong. Yes, you might be eternally discriminating what is right and what is wrong, but unless there is the impetus from within, unless the heart cooperates, it remains an intellectual thing. Yes, by doing things mechanically also, we get a taste. That's the utility. If we have not the real love for God, if the heart is not pure, what is to be done? Do mechanically. By doing a thing repeatedly, you develop love for that, you taste for that. Both ways, for good things and for bad things. If one wants to spoil oneself, one can go, mix with evil companion and so on. Gradually one will deteriorate. Shankaracharya, in one of his verses, in the first jewel of discrimination, he says very clearly, a person who has reached almost the final, not almost the final, a little less, even he, if he does not remain cautious, the chance he will slip, he may slip. As if a boat is leaking, however tiny that leak might be, it will become greater and greater. And in the same way, when you repeatedly, even mechanically do a thing in the form of spiritual practice, gradually taste grows. First mechanical thing, then taste grows, then grows real love. And it is said, if a person has the least amount of, very little spiritual yearning, even if he or she tries, then it can be developed. That the spark is there. Spark may become a wild conflagration. It can be developed. So the Gita says, one who has love for God, then he has achieved a great thing. But another person with great spiritual practice has not been able to achieve that for one reason or another. He might be still in mechanical level. So important thing, if one has love for God, then he has achieved a great thing. He's on the way, he's on the current, he's on the midstream with breeze, favorable breeze blowing. Ramakrishna spoke of some of the Brahma leaders of his time belonging to the Protestant school of Hinduism. They were intellectual people, mostly Western, with Western education. They'll be meditating, and Ramakrishna said this. He put in his such subtle humor, but because he had great affection for even those leaders, even in their presence he would say things. But he had subtle humor, and he would say that was much deeper was his affection for all, for them too. He says, the knowers of Brahman of the modern age have not got real love for God. You can see that, you can know that from their eyes and from their face. The eyes seem so dry, then face seems also so dry. So the knowers of Brahman, they say Brahma, that means those who have known Brahma. So it's a subtle humor, he said, his subtle humor. The knowers of Brahman of the present age have not got real taste, have not known what is the sweetness of loving God. Their face is dry, their eyes also look strained. But unless there is love for God, nothing is achieved. One Brahma leader said that Brahman is not joy, but without little devotion, we shall create joy in our realization of Brahman. Ramakrishna said, just see what they say. They said, Brahman is the essence of joy. Upanishad says Brahman is the quintessence of joy. Brahman is the real essence of joy. Ramakrishna said, look at that in those persons who are saying in a Brahman, while preaching, he said, Brahman, when you meditate on Brahman, it is dry, but you should cover it with a little devotion, with a with a little covering of devotion, so that they do not know anything. So he insisted there should be love for God. And if we believe the text of the Gita or the scriptures, when you develop love for God, then help comes. He gives us help. All incarnations would say that way. Christ says, come unto me, all that labor and are heavy laden. Labor, you are doing spiritual practice. And heavy laden, you cannot get out of the heavy loads of imperfections. I'll give unto you rest. I'll give you peace. I'll give you help. My burden is, my yoke is light. My yoke is light or easy. My burden is light. That is the thing. That's exactly what every incarnation will say. Ramakrishna said to some person, exactly, one person came to him and he said, I've done so many wrong things in life. What shall I do? He said, don't think of the past, think of me. He said, that's startling statement. Sometimes you could not bear the idea that anybody should pay respect to him. Anybody would call him a teacher or a master. Much less. At that time he would not say, I'm nothing. He would say, I'm the servant of the Lord. But he sometimes would say in a positive way. I'm quoting M. M in his private conversations said these things. This is not in the Gospel of Ramakrishna. He said, it might be he said to him. M sometimes would not say, would say indirectly. It might be he said to M. I said, you have not to look to your past. Don't think of your past. Think of me. Not think of the present. He said, think of me, that is enough. And he said to M, and M would repeat it as if he said to some other person, whatever I have done, you will get these things as an inheritance. What else do you want? You see, it can come if you just claim your inheritance. Who can claim his inheritance? from his father, one who has the idea that he is my father when he knows he is the son. In the same way, when one knows one is a child of God, not simply mechanically, not simply wordy statement. If one has real love for God, it comes that I am a son of God, I am a child of God. Then everything is easy. All the inheritance comes at once. It is his inheritance, collected, kept for him. The will is there. You must get it. So here, the Gita, in the last verse, it said in such a way, thinking or fearing, Arjuna will be bewildered that it is so difficult. And he said, yes, that is the way. If one has love for me, if one worships me with real devotion, the word is Shraddha. Shraddha is a peculiar Sanskrit word, which cannot be translated into Sanskrit. In English, many things, confidence and faith in the scriptures and faith in God, all these things combined. Confidence that you claim your birthright, it must be there. Simply faith in God and scriptures is not enough. You must claim your birthright. Love for God would be so spontaneous. So here the Gita says, in the Gita 6 says, just like Christ, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. It will become easy for you. That is the reason, perhaps, why this verse is put first, last. Just concluding first. All these things will not be difficult for you. It will be very busy. It will be very easy if you can develop love for God. And to develop love for God, you have to do all these things, spiritual practice. Some persons are fortunate, spontaneously from the very birth, or easily they develop love for God. Not all. But others need not despair. Others also can develop that. The scripture says, the Gita says, partial. Whoever has the yearning will get the result. And whoever tries, God will help him. So it is very easy. Just to show that meditation is not difficult, Sri Krishna says in the last verse of this chapter, how it can be made easy. Let us stop. Yes.
You mentioned that when developing a love for God, that you want to see him. Now, does this mean a vision depending on one's spiritual attainment or a state of bliss? Just what does this mean?
It is not so much a practical problem, just how to develop love for God. And then you ask that question. What is the seeing vision and all that is not the important thing. The important thing is how to develop love for God. Then that question will come in your mind, really. That will be a practical question. Yes.
If you assume that meditation is contact with God, then wouldn't meditation develop love for God?
Yes, it does. Why I say it?
The reason I'm asking it is because you said something about love for God was more important than meditation. I would think meditation would be love for God.
No. I said there is meditation, real meditation and struggling meditation. You are struggling for meditation. Most people struggle for meditation, also simply fighting with negative thoughts. When it comes real meditation, that it is love for God. That is true. So the difference.